Commander Sarah stepped off the transport ship and into the docking bay of 7 Space Station. The metal floor felt cold under her boots. She had dreamed of this moment for years, but now that it was here, her stomach twisted with nerves. This was humanity's first official meeting with the Empire. Sarah carried the hopes of 8 billion humans on her shoulders. One wrong move could start a war. One right move could open the stars to her people. The docking bay was huge, bigger than 3 football fields. Strange alien symbols glowed on the walls in soft blue light. The air smelled different here, like metal and something she could not name. Sarah's team of 5 diplomats walked behind her, their faces pale with worry. "Remember the briefing," Sarah whispered to her team. "Be respectful, follow their customs. Do not touch anything unless they say it is okay." The main doors slid open with a soft hiss. What came through made Sarah's breath catch in her throat. The delegation was led by beings that looked like walking nightmares. They stood 8 feet tall on powerful legs. Their skin was dark and hard, like natural armor. Sharp ridges ran along their arms and backs. Their faces were angular, with large yellow eyes that seemed to see everything. But the one in front was different. She was even taller than the others, nearly 9 feet high. Scars covered her arms and face like a map of old battles. Her armor skin was darker, almost black. When she moved, it was with the smooth grace of a born killer. "I am Ra of the 5th Claw," the giant alien said. Her voice was deep and rough, like gravel in a metal bucket. "Champion of the arena, breaker of the weak, slayer of the void hunters, I speak for the Empire in this place." Sarah stepped forward and bowed as her briefing had taught her. "I am Commander Sarah of the United Earth Fleet. I bring greetings from humanity and hope for friendship between our peoples." Ra's large eyes studied Sarah like she was looking at a small insect. "You are smaller than we expected, human. Your people must be very weak if you are their champion." Sarah felt her team tense behind her, but she kept her voice calm. "We believe that strength comes in many forms. We hope to show you ours through peaceful cooperation." "Peaceful?" Ra repeated the word like it tasted bad. "We will see." The ceremony hall was even more impressive than the docking bay. The ceiling stretched up so high that Sarah could barely see it. Banners hung from the walls, each one showing the symbol of a different clan. The largest banner hung in the center, directly over a raised platform where the talks would take place. The banner was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It showed a silver claw against a red background, surrounded by golden stars. The fabric looked ancient but well cared for. Sarah could feel the history and importance radiating from it. "That is the banner of the 5th Claw," Ra said, noticing Sarah's stare. "It has flown over 1,000 victories. My ancestors died to keep it flying. It is the most sacred thing my clan owns." Other alien species filled the great hall. Sarah saw beings that looked like walking trees, others that seemed to be made of living crystal, and some that floated in the air like jellyfish. All of them had come to watch this historic meeting. The opening ceremony began with long speeches about honor, strength, and the glory of the Empire. Sarah's translator device worked hard to keep up with all the alien words. Her feet began to hurt from standing so long in one place. Finally, it was time for the humans to approach the platform and sign the initial contact agreement. Sarah walked forward with careful steps, very aware that hundreds of alien eyes were watching her every move. The platform was raised about 3 feet off the ground. Steps led up to it from all 4 sides. Sarah focused on walking straight and keeping her balance. She could not afford to look clumsy in front of all these powerful aliens. She was halfway across the platform when disaster struck. Sarah's boot caught on something. She stumbled forward trying to catch her balance. Her hands shot out to steady herself, but instead of finding empty air, they grabbed onto fabric. The sacred banner of the 5th Claw tore free from its mounting. Sarah fell forward, landing hard on the ancient fabric. The sound of tearing cloth filled the silent hall like thunder. Time seemed to stop. Sarah looked down in horror. The beautiful banner was beneath her, wrinkled and torn. A small rip ran down one side where her boot had caught it. The silver claw symbol was bent and dirty from her fall. The hall was completely silent. Sarah could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Slowly, she looked up at Ra. The alien warrior's face had gone completely still. Her yellow eyes were wide with shock and growing anger. Every scar on her body seemed to glow with rage. Her hands slowly curled into fists, and Sarah could see sharp claws extending from her fingertips. "You," Ra said, her voice so quiet it was barely a whisper. "You dare to touch the sacred banner of my clan." Sarah scrambled to her feet, still holding part of the torn fabric. "I am so sorry. It was an accident. Please, I meant no disrespect." But Ra was no longer listening. She threw back her massive head and let out a roar that made the entire station shake. Every in the hall answered with their own battle cries. The sound was like standing inside a thunderstorm. "You have stained our honor," Ra shouted over the noise. "You have insulted our ancestors. You have shown that humans are clumsy children who cannot be trusted with sacred things." Sarah's diplomatic team rushed forward, trying to apologize and explain. The other alien species began talking loudly among themselves. Some looked excited, like they were watching a good fight start. Others looked worried, like they knew this was very bad news. "Please," Sarah said, still holding the torn banner. "Let me make this right. Tell me what I can do to fix this." Ra's face twisted into a fierce smile that showed far too many sharp teeth. "There is only one way to restore honor once it has been lost, small human. Only one way to wash clean the stain you have made." The great hall fell silent again, as every being waited to hear what the champion would say next. "I invoke the ancient right of reclamation," Ra declared, her voice carrying to every corner of the huge room. "Single combat, to the death, tomorrow at sunrise." Sarah felt her blood turn to ice water. Around the hall, aliens began to murmur excitedly. Some were already starting to place bets. Her first diplomatic mission had just become a fight for her life. The emergency meeting in Sarah's quarters felt like a funeral. Her 5 team members sat around the small table, their faces pale with shock. Outside the window, the stars looked cold and distant. "This is insane," said Dr. Martinez, the team's cultural expert. His hands shook as he flipped through his notes. "According to everything we know about law, you cannot refuse this challenge. If you do, it means war." Sarah sat quietly, still seeing Ra's face in her mind. "Tell me about this right of reclamation thing." Ambassador Williams, the oldest member of their team, cleared his throat. "It is an ancient law, very old, very serious. When someone insults a clan's honor, the clan champion can demand single combat to restore their standing." "Has anyone ever refused?" Sarah asked. "Once," Dr. Martinez said, reading from his tablet. "The Helix Confederation refused the challenge 50 years ago. They destroyed 3 of their worlds in response." Sarah felt sick, "So I have to fight her." "The law says the combat must take place in the arena of truth," Williams continued. "Each fighter gets to choose their weapons and fighting style. Combat continues until one person surrenders or dies." "And surrender?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. "Has never happened," Martinez said quietly. "In 800 years of recorded challenges, no has ever surrendered, and no challenger has ever beaten a clan champion." Sarah's security chief captain leaned forward. "What about their weapons? What kind of technology are we dealing with?" Dr. Martinez pulled up a video file on his tablet. "This is footage from Ra's last duel 6 months ago. Watch carefully." The video showed the arena of truth, a large circular space surrounded by high walls. 2 figures stood in the center. One was Ra, looking exactly as dangerous as she had in the ceremony hall. The other was a reptilian alien twice Sarah's size. The fight lasted less than 2 minutes. Ra moved like liquid lightning. Her chosen weapons were some kind of energy claws that extended from her hands, glowing bright blue and crackling with power. Every strike cut through her opponent's armor like it was paper. Every move was perfect, deadly, efficient. When it ended, the reptilian alien was dead, and Ra had not even broken a sweat. "She has killed 17 opponents in formal duels," Martinez said, turning off the video. "Her record in the arena is perfect. She has never been seriously injured, never been knocked down, never even looked tired after a fight." "What about her fighting style?" Captain asked. "They call it the hunt of the apex predator. It is pure offense, no defense at all. The idea is to attack so fast and so hard that the enemy cannot fight back. It has made her famous across the Empire." Sarah stood up and walked to the window. Space looked very dark out there. "When do I have to choose my weapons?" "Tonight," Williams said. "The ceremony happens in 4 hours. Both fighters declare their weapons and fighting style in front of witnesses. After that, no changes are allowed." "What weapons do we have access to?" Sarah asked. Captain opened his equipment case. "Standard military gear, plasma rifle, pulse pistol, combat knife, body armor. We also have some experimental energy weapons that might work." Sarah looked at the weapons spread out on the table. They all looked deadly and modern. Any one of them could kill a person in seconds. "What does the law say about weapon restrictions?" "No restrictions," Martinez said. "Anything goes as long as both fighters have equal opportunity to choose. Some aliens bring weapons we have never seen before." "Then why," Sarah said slowly, "do I feel like none of these are the right choice?" Her team looked confused. Captain picked up the plasma rifle. "Sarah, this thing can punch holes in starship armor. Whatever her claws can do, this can do better." "But that is not how she thinks," Sarah said. She was quiet for a long moment, an idea forming in her mind. "She expects me to choose the most powerful weapons I have. She expects me to try to match her in raw firepower." And Williams asked. "And that is exactly how all her other opponents thought too." Sarah turned back to the window. "Show me the station schematics, everything. Power grid, environmental systems, gravity generators, life support, maintenance schedules." "Why?" Martinez asked. "Because I am not going to fight her the way she expects." The weapon declaration ceremony took place in a smaller hall, but it was still packed with aliens from every species on the station. Word of the duel had spread fast, and everyone wanted to see what weapons the fighters would choose. Ra entered first, walking like she owned the place. Her energy claws were already activated, casting blue light across her face. When she reached the center of the hall, she raised them above her head and roared. "I choose the claws of fallen stars," she announced. "Weapons of my ancestors, blessed by the blood of 1,000 enemies. I will fight in the style of the hunt of the apex predator, as befits a true warrior." The crowd cheered loudly. Several other species made sounds of approval. Sarah could see aliens already starting to place bets, and the odds did not look good for humanity. Then it was Sarah's turn. She walked to the center of the hall carrying a simple metal case. The crowd fell silent, waiting to see what advanced human weapons she would reveal. Sarah opened the case and pulled out a plain steel sword. It was not fancy, not high-tech, not even very sharp-looking. It was just a basic military training sword, the kind used in combat practice. The crowd began to murmur in confusion. Next, Sarah pulled out a wooden shield. It was round, painted military green, with a simple metal boss in the center. It looked like something from a history museum. The murmurs turned to laughter. "I choose these," Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. "A steel sword and wooden shield of earth. I will fight in the style of..." She paused, thinking of the right words, adaptive defense. Ra stared at Sarah like she had gone insane. Those are not weapons, little human. Those are toys, ancient things from a primitive world. They are my choice, Sarah said calmly. You insult me further, Ra roared. Do you think I am so weak that you can defeat me with such pathetic tools? Sarah looked directly into the alien's yellow eyes. I think you are exactly as strong as you appear to be. These weapons will be enough. The crowd exploded into noise. Some aliens were laughing so hard they could barely stand. Others looked confused or worried. A few seemed almost angry that the duel might not be the epic battle they had expected. Ra's face twisted with rage. So be it, fool. When you die tomorrow, it will be with honor despite your poor choices. I will make your death quick, as a mercy to your weak species. Thank you, Sarah said and meant it. As the ceremony ended and the crowd began to disperse, Sarah heard the betting odds being updated. They had started at 500 to 1 against her. Now they were climbing toward 1,000 to 1. Her own team looked at her like she had lost her mind completely. Sarah, Captain whispered as they walked back to their quarters, what are you doing? Those weapons cannot possibly hurt her through her natural armor. You are right, Sarah said. They probably cannot. Then why? Sarah stopped walking and turned to face her confused team. Because this fight is not about the weapons. It never was. Ra wins her fights before she ever enters the arena. She wins them in her opponent's mind when they see her record and her reputation and her perfect fighting style. I still do not understand, Martinez said. She has spent her entire life fighting opponents who tried to match her strength with strength, power with power, speed with speed. Sarah smiled, and for the first time since the ceremony, she looked confident. I am going to do something different. What? Williams asked. I am going to be human. Her team still looked confused, but Sarah did not explain further. She had a lot of preparation to do, and less than 18 hours to do it. The arena of truth was going to be very interesting tomorrow. The news of the duel spread through 7 space station like wildfire. By morning, aliens from every deck were talking about the tiny human who had chosen primitive weapons to fight the deadliest warrior in the Empire. In the gambling halls, the odds against Sarah had reached 1,500 to 1. Some bookies had stopped taking bets entirely, saying it was basically theft to accept money on such a sure thing. It will be over in 30 seconds, said a crystal being to his tree-like companion. Maybe less if the human is smart enough to stand still. I heard she chose wooden weapons, laughed a floating jellyfish creature. Wood, against energy claws, it will be like watching paper fight fire. But while most of the station treated the coming duel like a joke, Sarah was working harder than she had ever worked in her life. She had not slept at all. Instead, she spent the entire night in the station's technical section, studying blueprints and system manuals until her eyes burned. Her team found her there at dawn, surrounded by data tablets and empty coffee cups. Sarah, you need rest, Dr. Martinez said, looking worried. The fight is in 6 hours. Rest is not what I need, Sarah replied without looking up from her screens. Information is what I need, and I think I have enough now. Captain looked over her shoulder at the complex diagrams covering her workspace. What is all this? Atmospheric pressure charts, gravity field schematics, lighting control systems. Insurance, Sarah said. She stood up and stretched, her back cracking from hunching over the tablets all night. Tell me, what do you know about Ra's home world? Zephyr Prime, Martinez answered automatically. High gravity, about 1.4 times Earth normal. Thick atmosphere, mostly nitrogen and carbon dioxide. Very stable day and night cycles, with consistent lighting. Exactly, Sarah said. And what kind of environment has she trained in her entire life? The same, I suppose. Most warrior cultures train in their home conditions. Which means, Sarah continued, that she has never had to adapt to changing conditions during combat. She has never fought while gravity was shifting, or air pressure was fluctuating, or lighting was inconsistent. Ambassador Williams frowned. "What are you planning?" Sarah picked up a data tablet showing the station's environmental control schedule. "I am planning to level the playing field, literally." An hour later, Sarah stood in the office of Station Administrator, a nervous-looking alien with too many arms and eyes. The administrator kept wringing his multiple hands while he read Sarah's formal request. "This is unusual," said his translator, making his voice sound tinny. "You want to modify the arena's environmental settings during the duel." "For religious reasons," Sarah said, keeping her face serious. "On Earth, we believe that combat must take place under the conditions that the spirits of our ancestors approve of. These specific settings honor the warriors who came before me." It was complete nonsense, of course, but aliens always respected religious requirements. They might not understand them, but they honored them. "The pressure changes you are requesting," said, studying the numbers. "They are quite significant, from 0.8 atmospheres to 1.1 in a cycling pattern." "The breathing of our gods," Sarah said solemnly. "And the gravity fluctuations, from 0.7 to 1.3 Earth normal. The heartbeat of our world spirit." "And this lighting pattern," showed her a screen full of seemingly random flashing sequences. "It appears to be chaos." "The dance of our star ancestors in the void," Sarah said without missing a beat. Looked confused but impressed. "Humans have very complex spiritual beliefs." "We are a complicated people," Sarah agreed. The administrator's many shoulders sagged in defeat. "Very well. The arena will be configured according to your requirements, but I must warn you, these changes will affect both fighters equally, if you are trying to gain some advantage." "I understand completely," Sarah said. "My ancestors would accept nothing less than equal conditions for all warriors." After leaving the administrator's office, Sarah went to the station's maintenance section. The chief engineer, a squat alien covered in mechanical attachments, looked up from his work with surprise. "Commander, what brings you to my domain? Should you not be preparing for combat?" "I am preparing," Sarah said. "I need to understand something about the arena's systems, specifically how the environmental controls affect the space during operation." The engineer's metallic face lit up with enthusiasm. "Ah, a warrior who appreciates the technical aspects of combat. Most fighters only care about their weapons." He pulled up a holographic display of the arena. "As you can see, the environmental systems work in zones. Gravity generators here, and here. Atmospheric processors along the walls. Lighting arrays in the ceiling, controlled in sections." Sarah studied the display carefully. "What about timing? How quickly do the systems respond to commands?" "Very quickly. All changes happen within 0.5 seconds of the command signal. We are very proud of our response time." "And the patterns I requested, will they be smooth transitions or sudden changes?" The administrator smoothed transitions for gravity and atmosphere, but rapid changes for lighting. "Apparently, your ancestors prefer," he checked his notes, "the dance of star ancestors." Sarah nodded seriously. "They can be demanding spirits." She spent another 2 hours with the engineer, learning every detail of how the environmental systems worked. By the time she left, she knew exactly when each change would happen, how long it would last, and how it would affect movement in the arena. Her final stop was the station's medical bay. Doctor, the chief medical officer, scanned Sarah with concern using too many different colored lights. "Your stress levels are extremely high," the doctor said. "Your heart rate is elevated, your brain activity is chaotic. Are you certain you want to go through with this?" "I am certain," Sarah said, "but I need to ask you about physiology, specifically how their inner ear works." Doctor looked surprised. An unusual question, why do you ask? Know your enemy, Sarah said simply. The doctor brought up a detailed anatomical display. Balance systems are quite advanced, actually. Their inner ear structure is more complex than human ears, with additional chambers that help them maintain perfect equilibrium. It makes them extremely difficult to knock off balance. What about when external conditions change suddenly? Ah, doctor said, understanding dawning in his large eyes. That is a different matter entirely. Their advanced balance system relies heavily on consistent environmental input. When conditions change rapidly, it can actually work against them, causing temporary disorientation as their inner ear tries to recalibrate. Sarah smiled for the first time in hours. How temporary? Perhaps a few seconds, depending on the severity of the change. But this would only happen if the changes were sudden and significant enough to overwhelm their natural adaptation abilities. Thank you, doctor. You have been very helpful. As Sarah left the medical bay, she felt a strange calm settling over her. The plan was coming together. It was risky, complicated, and required perfect timing, but it could work. Her team was waiting for her in their quarters, looking like they had not slept either. They all started talking at once when she entered. Sarah, we have been thinking about this all night. There has to be another way. Maybe we can claim diplomatic immunity. The weapons you chose make no sense. Sarah held up her hand for silence. I know you are worried. I know this looks impossible, but I need you to trust me. At least tell us what you are planning, Captain pleaded. Sarah looked at each of them in turn. These people had followed her across the galaxy, had put their faith in her leadership. They deserved to know something. Ra is the perfect fighter, Sarah said finally. But perfect fighters have a weakness. They expect perfection from everything around them too. Their techniques, their training, their entire mindset is built on consistent, predictable conditions. So, Martinez asked. So I am going to give her chaos instead. 2 hours before the duel, Sarah sat alone in her quarters, holding her simple steel sword. It was not much to look at, but it was familiar. She had trained with weapons like this since she was 16 years old, in every environment the military could create. She had fought in zero gravity and high gravity. She had fought in spinning chambers and pressure suits. She had fought while lights strobed, sirens blared, and explosions shook the ground beneath her feet. The military called it chaos training. The idea was simple. If you could fight while everything around you was going wrong, you could fight anywhere. Ra had spent her life perfecting her technique under perfect conditions. Sarah had spent her life learning to adapt when nothing went according to plan. In 1 hour, they would find out which approach was stronger. Sarah closed her eyes and began her final meditation, while somewhere else on the station, aliens were placing the last bets of their lives on what they thought would be the shortest duel in history. The Arena of Truth had never hosted a crowd this large. Aliens packed every seat, hung from the walls and pressed against the barriers. The air hummed with excitement and the constant buzz of translators working overtime. Sarah stood in the fighters' preparation chamber, listening to the roar of the crowd through the thick walls. Her simple weapons lay on a metal table beside her. The steel sword looked dull under the harsh lights. The wooden shield showed every scratch and dent from years of training. Last chance to change your mind, Captain said quietly. He had been trying to talk her out of this for hours. The weapons are locked in, Sarah replied. No changes allowed now. Through the small window, she could see Ra in the opposite chamber. The alien warrior was going through what looked like a ritual dance, her energy claws leaving bright trails in the air. Every movement was perfect, deadly, graceful. She looked like death itself preparing to work. Sarah, Dr. Martinez said, his voice tight with worry, we have been studying the betting patterns. Do you know the final odds? Sarah shook her head. 3,000 to 1 against you. the highest odds in the recorded history of 7 Station. Sarah picked up her sword and tested its weight. Good. That means everyone will remember this. The door to the arena slid open with a deep rumbling sound. The crowd noise hit Sarah like a physical force, thousands of alien voices cheering and laughing. She walked through the tunnel toward the bright light at the end, her heart beating steady and strong. The arena of truth was a perfect circle, 50 meters across. The floor was made of some kind of dark metal that reflected the lights above. High walls rose up on all sides, topped with force fields to protect the spectators. The ceiling was a dome covered with lighting arrays that could be programmed for any environment. Sarah stepped into the arena and the crowd noise doubled. Most of the aliens were laughing and pointing at her simple weapons. She heard someone shout, "Look at the tiny human with her sticks," followed by more laughter. Then Ra entered from the opposite side. The laughter stopped. The champion strode into the arena like a force of nature. Her energy claws sparked and crackled, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Her face was set in a mask of controlled fury. Every step she took made the metal floor ring like a bell. The crowd began chanting her name, Ra, Ra, Ra. She reached the center of the arena and raised her claws above her head. The crowd roared its approval. Then she looked directly at Sarah, and her yellow eyes were like looking into twin suns. "Little human," Ra called across the arena, her voice carrying easily over the noise. "I offer you one final chance to surrender. Leave this place with your life and the knowledge that you are simply too weak for real combat." Sarah walked to her position in the center, 20 meters away from the alien champion. "I thank you for the offer, but I must respectfully decline." Ra's face twisted into what might have been respect or hunger or both. "So be it. You will die with honor, which is more than your pathetic weapons deserve." The arena master, a tall alien with crystal formations growing from his head, raised his staff. "Champions, the right of reclamation has been invoked. Combat will continue until surrender or death. Are both fighters ready?" "I am ready," Ra roared. "I am ready," Sarah said quietly. "Then let combat begin." Ra exploded into motion. Sarah had watched videos of the aliens' fighting style, but seeing it in person was like watching lightning take physical form. Ra covered half the distance between them in a single leap, her energy claws whistling through the air toward Sarah's head. Sarah threw herself to the side, barely avoiding the strike. The claws passed so close to her face that she could smell the ozone they left in the air. She hit the arena floor hard, rolled, and came up with her shield between her and the next attack. The energy claws struck her wooden shield with a sound like thunder. Splinters of wood flew in all directions. Sarah felt the impact all the way up her arm, but the shield held. Ross snarled in surprise. Most opponents tried to avoid her first attack completely. Very few were quick enough to block it, and none had ever done it with such a primitive weapon. "Impressive," the alien warrior said, already moving for her second strike. "But wood cannot stand against star metal forever." She was right, of course. Each blow from the energy claws tore chunks from Sarah's shield. In the first minute of combat, the wooden circle was reduced to half its original size. Sarah gave ground steadily, blocking what she could and dodging what she could not. To the watching crowd, it looked exactly as they had expected. The small human was being driven back, her primitive defenses crumbling under the relentless assault of a true warrior. "Boring," someone shouted from the stands. "Finish her quickly." But Sarah was not trying to win yet. She was learning. Every block, every dodge, every desperate scramble across the arena floor was teaching her something about Ra's patterns. The alien's technique was perfect, but perfection meant predictability. After the first 3 minutes, Sarah could tell which attack was coming next just by watching Ra's stance. High strike, low strike, spinning slash, overhead chop. The sequences were beautiful and deadly, but they never changed. Meanwhile, the environmental modifications Sarah had requested were beginning to take effect. It started with the lighting. The bright white illumination that had filled the arena began to strobe and flicker, not enough to blind anyone, but enough to make shadows dance and depth perception uncertain. Ra noticed immediately, but she dismissed it as a minor distraction. Her people had fought in stranger conditions than this. Then the gravity shifted. The change was subtle at first, dropping from standard station gravity to about 70% of Earth normal. For Sarah, who had trained extensively in variable gravity, it was like taking off heavy boots. Her movements became quicker and more fluid. For Ra, it was the first sign that something was wrong. The alien warrior stumbled slightly on her next attack, not expecting the reduced weight of her own body. She recovered instantly, but Sarah saw the moment of confusion in her eyes. "What trickery is this?" Ra demanded, her claws missing Sarah by inches. "No trickery," Sarah replied, finally striking back for the first time. Her sword clanged harmlessly off Ra's natural armor, but it forced the alien to block instead of attack. "Just the will of my ancestors." The atmospheric pressure began to change next, dropping from the thick air that Ra was used to toward something closer to Earth normal. The alien's breathing, which had been steady and controlled, became slightly labored. But it was the gravity that caused the real problems. The system cycled upward now, climbing toward 1.3 times Earth standard. Ra's perfect balance, evolved for the consistent conditions of her home world, began to struggle with the shifting weight of her own body. Her next attack came in too high, thrown off by the miscalculation of her own strength in the changing gravity. Sarah ducked under it and struck with her sword at Ra's knee joint. Again, the blade did no real damage, but it forced the alien to hop back awkwardly, her balance system still trying to adjust to the new conditions. For the first time since the duel began, Sarah was not retreating. The crowd began to notice the change. The laughter had stopped completely. Aliens who had been joking about the quick fight were now leaning forward in their seats, trying to understand what they were seeing. "Is the human actually fighting back?" someone asked in confusion. "Look at Ra," another voice replied. "She looks uncertain." The alien champion was indeed looking uncertain. Her perfect technique was beginning to crack under the pressure of constantly changing conditions. The lighting made her depth perception unreliable. The shifting gravity threw off her timing. The pressure changes affected her breathing rhythm. Worst of all, her opponent was not behaving like any enemy she had ever faced. Sarah was not trying to match Ra's strength or speed. Instead, she was adapting to every change in the environment faster than the alien could compensate. When gravity was high, Sarah moved in short, controlled bursts. When it was low, she flowed like water. When the lights strobed, she used the confusion to change position. "Impossible," Ra snarled, her next attack missing completely as she misjudged the distance in the flickering light. "You fight like a coward. Where is your honor? Where is your strength?" Sarah smiled as she deflected another strike with what remained of her shield. "I am fighting exactly like a human." The words seemed to confuse Ra even more. She had studied human military tactics, human weapons, human strategies, but she had never considered that humans might have developed a completely different philosophy of combat. Where fighting was about perfection under ideal conditions, human fighting was about adaptation under chaos. Where aliens trained to be unstoppable forces, humans trained to be unbreakable spirits. The environmental changes continued to cycle, and with each shift, Sarah moved more confidently while Ra struggled more obviously. The alien's breathing was becoming ragged, her balance uncertain, her perfect timing destroyed by the constantly shifting conditions. But her energy claws were still deadly, and her strength was still overwhelming. One direct hit would end the fight instantly. Sarah's shield finally disintegrated completely under a particularly fierce assault. leaving her with only her simple steel sword against an opponent who had killed 17 other fighters. The crowd held its breath. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. Now the real fight would begin. Sarah stood alone in the center of the arena, holding nothing but a simple steel sword. Her wooden shield lay in pieces around her feet. Across from her, Ra raised her energy claws with a roar of triumph that shook the entire station. "Now you have nothing left to hide behind, little human," the alien champion shouted. "Face me with honor and die like a warrior." The crowd was on its feet, screaming with excitement. This was the moment they had paid to see. The tiny human with her primitive weapons was finally going to face the full fury of the greatest fighter in the Empire. But as Ra charged forward for what everyone expected to be the killing blow, something impossible happened. Sarah did not retreat. Instead, she stepped forward to meet the attack, moving with a fluid grace that seemed to flow around the environmental chaos like water around rocks. As the gravity shifted to its highest setting, making everyone else feel heavy and slow, Sarah adjusted instantly. As the lights strobed in their most confusing pattern, creating a maze of dancing shadows, Sarah moved as if she could see perfectly. Ra's perfect strike, calculated for standard conditions, met nothing but empty air. Sarah was already behind her. The human steel sword struck the alien between her shoulder blades with a ringing sound like a bell. It did no real damage against Ra's natural armor, but it did something much more important. It proved that the impossible was happening. Sarah was winning. "What?" Ra spun around, her yellow eyes wide with shock. "How did you?" Sarah was already moving again, her blade weaving complex patterns through the air as she struck at joints and weak points in Ra's armor. Each hit was carefully placed, designed not to kill but to confuse and disorient. The alien champion tried to counterattack, but her perfect technique was useless in the chaos. Every time she thought she had Sarah trapped, the human flowed away like smoke. Every time she calculated the perfect strike, the changing conditions made her miss by inches. It was like fighting a ghost. "Stand still and fight," Ra roared in frustration. "I am fighting," Sarah replied calmly, her sword ringing against the alien's claws. This is how humans fight. For the first time in her life, Ra was facing an opponent who was better adapted to the conditions than she was. Sarah moved through the environmental chaos like she had been born in it, while Ra struggled against every change. The crowd watched in stunned silence as their unbeatable champion began to stumble and miss. Aliens who had been laughing at the tiny human were now staring in disbelief. "This cannot be happening," whispered a crystalline being. "Look at her move," said a tree-like alien. "She is not fighting the changes, she is using them." They were right. Every shift in gravity became part of Sarah's attack pattern. Every flicker of light became a chance to confuse her opponent. Every pressure change gave her an advantage that Ra could not match. But the real breakthrough came when Sarah realized that the duel was not really about weapons at all. It was about philosophy. Ra fought to destroy her enemies. Every technique, every strategy, every instinct was focused on dealing maximum damage as quickly as possible. It was simple, direct, and brutally effective. But Sarah had been trained differently. In the human military, the goal was not always to destroy the enemy. Sometimes it was to neutralize them. Sometimes it was to capture them. Sometimes it was to make them surrender without fighting at all. Humans had learned that the greatest victories came not from proving you could kill, but from proving you did not have to. Sarah began to change her tactics. Instead of simply avoiding Ra's attacks, she started to redirect them. When the alien struck high, Sarah guided the blow down into the arena floor. When Ra lunged forward, Sarah stepped aside and used the alien's momentum to send her stumbling. It was a completely different kind of combat. Not the clash of titans that everyone expected, but something more like a dance where one partner knew all the steps and the other was just learning the music. Ra was getting tired. The constant environmental changes were draining her energy faster than any opponent ever had. Her breathing was labored, her movements becoming sloppy, her perfect balance destroyed by the shifting conditions. Sarah, meanwhile, seemed to be getting stronger. The truth was that she had trained for exactly this scenario thousands of times. Variable gravity combat was standard in the human military. Chaos training was required for all officers. Sarah had spent years learning to fight while everything around her was going wrong. She was finally in her element. The turning point came when the gravity suddenly dropped to its lowest setting, while the lights strobed their fastest pattern. Ra, disoriented and exhausted, made a desperate charge that would have killed any normal opponent. Sarah was not any normal opponent. She the attack with liquid grace, grabbed Ra's extended arm, and used the alien's own momentum combined with the low gravity to send her flying across the arena. Ra hit the far wall with a crash that shook the entire dome. She fell to the floor and lay still for a long moment, her energy claws flickering and going dark. The crowd was completely silent. Slowly, painfully, Ra pushed herself up to her hands and knees. Her face was twisted with confusion and something that might have been fear. "Impossible," she whispered. "I am the champion. I am undefeated. I am." "You are tired," Sarah said gently, walking toward her fallen opponent. "And you are fighting in conditions you have never trained for." Ra tried to stand, but her legs would not support her. The constant environmental changes had finally overwhelmed her inner ear completely. The arena seemed to spin around her even though she knew it was perfectly still. Sarah stopped just out of reach of the alien's claws. She could have struck then, could have ended the fight with a quick thrust to an unarmored joint. Instead, she did something that had never been done in the arena of truth. She lowered her weapon. "I could kill you now," Sarah said quietly. "You are helpless and I am armed. By the laws of your people, I have won." Ra's yellow eyes filled with confusion. "Then why do you hesitate? Finish it, take your victory." "Because," Sarah said, extending her free hand toward the fallen alien, "on my world, we believe that the greatest victory is not conquering your enemy. It is turning them into your friend." The words hit Ra like a physical blow. In her entire life, she had never heard anything like them. Her culture's strength, celebrated victory, honored only those who could destroy their opponents. But here was this tiny human, who had just defeated the greatest warrior in the Empire, offering mercy from a position of absolute strength. It was beyond her understanding. I cannot," Ra tried to speak, but the words would not come. Her entire worldview was crumbling around her. Sarah kept her hand extended, patient and calm. "On my world, we have a saying. The best way to destroy an enemy is to make them your friend. I would like to try that if you will let me." The arena was so quiet that every alien could hear the sound of their own breathing. Thousands of beings watched as the impossible continued to unfold before their eyes. Ra stared at Sarah's outstretched hand like it was some alien artifact she could not comprehend. Everything she had been taught, everything she believed about strength and combat and honor, said she should refuse, should die before accepting help from an enemy. But she was not looking at an enemy anymore. She was looking at something completely new. Slowly, moving like she was in a dream, Ra reached out and took Sarah's hand. Sarah helped her to her feet with surprising gentleness, supporting the alien's weight as her balance system continued to struggle with the changing environment. "Thank you," Sarah said simply. Ra opened her mouth to respond, but no sound came out. For the first time in her life, the greatest warrior in the Empire was completely speechless. The crowd erupted into chaos. Aliens were shouting in dozens of different languages, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. Some were cheering, some were arguing, and some were just staring in shock. But in the center of the arena, two beings from different worlds stood together in perfect silence. Sarah had won more than a duel. She had won something that would change the galaxy forever. The right to call a deadly enemy friend. As the station administrator rushed forward to officially declare the results, Ra finally found her voice. But all she could manage was a whisper that only Sarah could hear. "How?" the alien asked. "How did you know this would work?" Sarah smiled and helped her new friend toward the medical station. "Because that is what humans do. We adapt, we survive, and when we can, we choose hope over fear." Behind them, the crowd was still trying to process what they had seen. The betting computers had crashed from trying to calculate odds for an outcome that had never been imagined. But Sarah was not thinking about any of that. She was thinking about the future and all the doors that had just opened for her people. The duel was over. The real adventure was just beginning.